Santa Barbara City Council meeting of November 14th, 2017 to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Hotchkiss. Here. Councilmember White. Mayor Pro Tem Dominguez. Councilmember Rouse. Here. Councilmember Hart. Here. Councilmember Murillo.
Here.
Mayor Schneider. Item 1, subject proclamation declaring November 13th through 19th as Modern Roundabout Week.
Weeks for everything. That's great. Who's here to receive today's proclamation? Come on up. Come right up here. I get to read this to you. Welcome. And then you can say whatever you'd like. So, a modern roundabout is a circular intersection with right-only exits wherein traffic flows counterclockwise and those entering yield to flowing traffic. In the 5 Points area of Santa Barbara, where 5 streets meet at a single intersection, was often highly congested when stop signs controlled traffic. Innovative engineers Peter Doctors worked diligently to design a modern roundabout, and uncommon in America at the time, to ease congestion, improve traffic flow, and minimize collisions at the 5 Points intersection. Despite critics who felt the space was too small, city traffic engineer George Girth and the city of Santa Barbara agreed to build the roundabout. The 5 Points roundabout opened to traffic on November 13th, 1992, as the first roundabout located on the California State Highway System. And this year marks the 25th anniversary of the 5 Points roundabout, which has successfully minimized area congestion and collisions since inception. State and federal agencies recognize modern roundabouts among 9 proven safety strategies, a fact the California Department of Transportation says is upheld by, quote, safety research studies, which have all documented the dramatic safety advantage of modern roundabouts over traffic signals and side street stops. The City of Santa Barbara continues to embrace modern roundabouts for safer and smoothing operation intersections. So now, therefore, I, Helene Schneider, by virtue of the authority vested in me as Mayor of the City of Santa Barbara, California, do hereby proclaim November 13th through 19th, 2017 as Modern Roundabout Week in Santa Barbara. And thank you so much for being here today. And if you can introduce yourself, thank you, and say whatever you want.
Boy, that just about says it all, but I'll try not to repeat too much here. Mayor Schneider and council members, thank you for this proclamation issued on the 25th anniversary of the tiny 5 Points roundabout. Thank you for recognizing the importance of modern roundabouts in saving lives and preventing serious injuries. Roundabouts also facilitate the smooth and efficient flow of traffic, which is what 5 Points does really well. I am John Burnside, a civil and traffic engineer. I have been promoting well-designed modern roundabouts since 1985, 5 years before there were any modern roundabouts in the United States. I was in Santa Barbara on November 14th, 1992, to witness the one-day-old 5 Points roundabout. I really want to salute your longtime local resident engineer, Peter Doctors, the designer. Where am I here? 25 years ago, Peter was young and inexperienced and did not know that the intersection was too small for a modern roundabout. He did not know that it could not be done, so he just did it. And a marvelous design it was. It cleared all the morning backup of folks coming down Alameda Padre Serra trying to get to work. I watched it this morning, and it works really well, like a well-oiled, well-oiled Swiss clock, Swiss watch. Churns out the traffic. Sorry, but anyway, that's what I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. It's a good piece of Santa Barbara history and trivia, so thank you very much for being here. Okay, item number 2.
Item 2, subject employee recognition service award pins.
Mr. Casey.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and council members. Each month we like to recognize employees for achieving certain milestones in their service to the city. I've got a number of names to read into the record today. There's no one here to receive their pin in person. With 10 years of service to the city, Dave Elliott, Wastewater Treatment Plant Operator 2, Public Works Department. Brent Field, Librarian 2 at the library. And George Thompson, Parks Capital Project Supervisor, Parks and Recreation Department. With 15 years of service to the city, Jaime Herrera, Welder Fabricator, Public Works Department. Kathy Perret, Water Resources Specialist, Public Works Department. With 20 years of service, Scott Reedman, Waterfront Director and Harbor Master with the Waterfront Department. And Christy Schmidt, Administrative Services Director with the City Administrator's Office. 25 years of service to the city, Kristen Barrera, Public Safety Dispatch Supervisor, Police Department, and Frank Gomez, Streets Maintenance Crew Leader, Public Works Department, and with 30 years of service to the city, Hazel Johns, Airport Director.
Well, congratulations to them all. Any changes to the agenda? Okay. All right, public comment. We have 2 minutes here at the podium. I first want to express my congratulations to Mayor-elect Kathy Murillo for her resounding election, and to Councilmember Greg Hart for your re-election to council. And want to acknowledge council members Frank Hotchkiss and Bendy White for your valiant efforts in keeping democracy alive, and you're here today, and that's fantastic. So just want to acknowledge that to all of you for running. We know how trying that is for everybody. So congratulations. All right, with that, we do have a couple of speaker slips here for public comment. We'll start with Phil Walker and then Pete Del Bello.
Good afternoon, Mayor Schneider and members of the City Council. You know, win, lose, or draw, I voted for some and they did not win, but I feel the exercise of your civic responsibility was well taken care of. So, you know, you got talent standing before me and it all worked out, and I'm sure it shall work out. Okay, speaking of street smarts, the gentleman engineer was referring to it, but I had a very, very, very close call at to the west of the bathhouse crossing Cabrillo Boulevard. There's 2 crosswalks there that sort of bisect the 2 hotels, and the best way to say it, I did activate the LED pedestrian crossing light, did everything as you should. I waited, but here comes a very, very large hybrid MTD bus that happened. He did everything right, he or she, the driver, and he stopped right there. But when you walk out, it's like trying to go around, see around a wall. I had total blockage of the visibility, and the driver being he or she, I'm going to go to the MTD and thank him, because, you know, it could have been a very, very serious injury or worse. The driver had the whereabouts to just lay on his horn, and I froze in the crosswalk. 2 more strides that I would have been hit by a gentleman going probably 35 to 40 miles an hour, who apparently thought the bus was stopped for a pickup. So sometimes it can be confusing, I understand that, but that driver laying on that horn, I froze and did everything right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations again.
Thank you. Mr. Del Bello and Mr. Arturo Gallegos, you're waiving your 2 minutes. So, Mr. Del Bello, you have up to 4 minutes, and then Anna Marie Gott will be after you.
Okay. Madam Mayor and City Council, my name is Pete Del Bello, and I am a Santa Barbara native. You know, I've never heard of Modern Roundabout Week until I read the agenda. So, you know, you learn new things every day. And I remember when all the roundabouts were put in, especially the Salinas roundabout that I use every day. And overall, it has been very good. Today, actually, there was a lady that, good thing I drive defensively because she didn't yield. And, you know, I didn't honk the horn or say anything profane. I just said, "Lady!" And, but fortunately, there wasn't a problem. But I wish more people would remember to yield. They must be able to read to pass the written part of their driver's test, so understanding the signs shouldn't be a problem. Because if they're in such a hurry, they should be glad that the roundabout exists, because before there were 5 stop signs, and they would be really frustrated. In other news, I want to, on Wednesday, November 15th, is America Recycles Day. For more recycling information, please visit www.lessismore.org. That's lessismore.org. And Madam Mayor, I know you'll be happy to know that I've been recycling since the 1970s. And I also want to take this time to thank Ashley Shue and David Shoemaker, who are both with the Public Works Department, for their excellent work. The city has more than 200 miles of streets, so I was naturally interested in finding out how many streets there are in the city of Santa Barbara. I figured out there must be hundreds of streets, including my favorite, Melpa Street. According to this nice email from Ms. Shue, as she writes the following, we have determined that there are 479 uniquely named city-owned streets within the city of Santa Barbara. So that's very interesting, nearly 500 streets. In closing, I was having lunch with my friend Tom last week. We talked about how police presence reduces crime and other problems. The police substation on Montecito Street has been a big help to the east side. Tom then asked me the following: how come the city doesn't put a police substation on Lower State Street? That's a good question. Thank you for your time and kind attention.
Thank you. Anna Marie Gott will be followed by Brian Rosen.
Madam Mayor and City Council members, I want to let you know that I just sent you an email. It is about an article that appeared in the Telegraph, which is a paper in the UK. They actually found through a service called AirDNA that there was one person in the city of London alone that removed 881 units of housing to be placed on short-term vacation rentals sites. Specifically, 881 units placed on Airbnb. That was just one large property owner. They had others in Paris, Thailand, Bali, and other locations such as Barcelona. Santa Barbara has a number of large owners that actually have removed a number of residential units from the housing market. I've told you about some of them. I'm sure that Mr. Klon has lists of them. There are 3 that have removed 31 units of housing. I know some people that have been pushed out of housing in one of the properties. I have knocked on doors and talked to short-term vacation rental tourists who are just occupying the unit for the weekend. All of these houses or apartment buildings are still being rented. They have reviews from last month, even this month. And no one is doing anything about it. This is harming our residents. It's anti-family, it's anti-worker, and it is certainly anti-renter. But for 2 years, you guys have been supposedly supposed to be enforcing, but we don't see these things shut down. They are still listed, and it is because Airbnb will not honor the ordinances of the city of Santa Barbara or any other city. And I want to know when you guys are going to do something about it in terms of providing Mr. Kalan the resources that he needs
Thank you.
to ensure that they are closed. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Rosen, and is Laura Schmidt here? Laura? You're giving, I know, yes. And then Ms. Rosen, you'll be after Mr. Rosen. So you have up to 4 minutes.
Thank you. This is the kind of cause I'm working on. I'll probably have to be coming here the rest of my life. I mean, it's a hard cause, and people maybe that don't care. But maybe if I just come forever and ever, week upon week, you'll just want to do it to get rid of me. But I want to talk about, I'm talking about humane treatment of animals. I think it's very important, and I think I wish we had representatives who were on the caliber of Mahatma Gandhi. He cared, and he was very eloquent, and I should bring you his autobiography for you all to make copies from it for you to read. I'm going to read the letter to the editor part of it that I did. Hundreds of signatures have been collected asking the Santa Barbara City Council to support a resolution encouraging restaurants to offer humanely raised animal products. I didn't get no response from any of you except Kathy, who told me about the Bee City USA, which is wonderful, and a very thoughtful response from Hal Conklin. Then a few days later, I read this article that they all enjoy eating steak, and not you, Kathy, but the rest of them who were interviewed, steaks and factory farm chickens, and they don't really seem to care whether the animal was suffering or not, the candidates for mayor. And I'm disappointed in Hal Conklin. They seem to be pretty thoughtful. Frank Hotchkiss, to his credit, did give a response, and here's the letter to him. Dear Mr. Hotchkiss, I haven't received a response from you on whether you would support Santa Barbara being a humane city USA. Do you support humane raising of farm animals and for the City Council to do a resolution encouraging restaurants to offer humanely raised animal products? No, signed Frank. He doesn't support ethical treatment of animals, nor the Humane City USA. A society is judged by, I think you have got some good in you, Frank. Somewhere deep down in you, you do care, about poor people and so forth. But a society is judged by how it treats its weakest members. What does this lack of support for such a basic measure of humaneness tell us about the character of the candidates for mayor and members of the Santa Barbara City Council who don't respond? Gandhi said in his autobiography, My Experience of Truth, that the life of a lamb is no less valuable than the life of a human being. He said the more helpless a creature, the more entitled it is to our protection. He was, in fact, an adamant vegetarian. So was his wife, who refused the meat broth that the doctors wanted her to eat during a serious illness. She said it was a rare thing to be born a human being, and she would rather die than eat the flesh of animals. You can read his autobiography for yourself, Frank. There are certain things we can't. None of you are on that level, but many Americans don't believe in. They want their animals to be raised humanely. Very few people agree with Gandhi. He's some kind of real extremist, right? But I just want to say that how we treat the lowest in our society is it's how we judge a society. Frank seemed to want to be rough on the homeless. Well, I don't. There are some aggressive homeless. I haven't encountered them. I don't think we should get even with them by sinking to their level. If there are a few of those, I think we should try to help them and raise our own consciousness and heal them. And we need some healing and some meaningful opportunities. And I did a letter to the editor some time ago about offering health certificates so people could buy health certificates, so the homeless could, instead of buying alcohol with the money that people give them, they go on and go to a health food store and get something healthy. It will help their consciousness. Less alcohol. It will less likely to die if they're healthier, raise the vibration. So I hope you will all care. That's all I want.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Patricia Rosen, and then Jay Goolsby will be the final speaker.
Hello. I'm Patricia Rosen. So good to be here today. Now, the problem with me is everything Brian said was so true, and I believe the same way he believes. And I even hate to go in grocery stores and see the butcher department have these cute little pigs carcasses in there. They could be like our dogs at home. They understand what we're saying. They could live out in the front yard and come in the house, and we say no, they'll go with it. They'll do no. In other words, they're as intelligent as our dogs are, and we all love our dogs. So I don't like to see the butcher shops having these poor little carcasses of pigs in their little showroom. Now, I know there's nothing you can do about it, but think about it anyway, about becoming a vegetarian instead of someone who eats these poor little creatures. Okay? Thank you. Bye-bye.
Jay Goolsby?
Well, I wasn't expecting to be here. I was just recently asked to come. So what I would like to say is that I really appreciate what all of you are doing for Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara is a very special place. on the planet, actually. And I remember the roundabout in Tijuana. When you went down there, there was a huge roundabout down there years and years ago. And I was a child in Los Angeles and moved here 57 years ago to Santa Barbara. And I moved here because Los Angeles was getting too big, and I've witnessed an increase in size in Santa Barbara as well. And there's growth is really difficult to manage, and there's some advantages and disadvantages, but I think everybody's been doing a wonderful job and helping us all to get along together, and appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. I also want to acknowledge Councilmember-elect Kristen Sneddon is here, and congratulations to you as well, the new 4th District council member. So with that, we'll close public comment and on to the consent calendar. You have an item to read.
Item 4, subject, bequest from Estate of Penny Ridgeway to the City of Santa Barbara Public Library. Recommendation that council adopt by reading of title only a resolution of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara accepting a bequest from the Estate of Penny Ridgeway, accepting a donation from the Estate of Penny Ridgeway in the sum of $11,072.69 for the exclusive use and benefit of the Santa Barbara Public Library.
Thank you. Without further objection, we'll waive further reading. There's a speaker slip for item 10. Any other items to remove from the consent calendar? No. If you could read item 10, please.
Item 10, subject, continuance of the appeal of the revocation of storefront collective dispensary permit at 3617 State Street.
Thank you, Mr. Dalbello, and come on up. And Mr. Gallegos, you're waiving your 2 minutes, so Mr. Dalbello, you have up to 4 minutes.
Ooh, we'll get some tall people here. Okay. Madam Mayor and City Council, my name is Pete Dalbello, and I am a Santa Barbara native. I come before you again today, but this time to request that you deny the appeal and uphold the staff hearing officer's decision to revoke the medical marijuana dispensary permit at 3617 State Street in Ontario Plaza. I'm glad to see that Joe Allen, who was the applicant, appears to no longer be involved. As we all know, Mr. Allen is no longer eligible to practice law in the state of California. As I mentioned in the past, I'm the founder and president of a medical nonprofit. I have seen the benefits of medical marijuana and the benefits it has had in improving patients' lives. The state and city need to look at more than just tax revenue and building codes. Among my concerns, in addition to the safety for patients and that they are served by management that they can trust, is land use issues. I don't know Mr. McGee or Mr. Armour, so I can't comment on them. I can comment on the parking, which is a land use issue. Ever since Janine's went into Ontario Plaza years ago, it has put a parking strain on neighborhood streets. Now, parking is already a problem, and you're looking at a possibility of, I don't know, maybe 150 customers a day going in to Ontario Plaza, where parking's already a problem now. What is that going to do? Just create more of a parking problem. And so that's, that is a big concern. And so I suggest that the owner of this property, Richard Doolittle, I suggest he does more to learn about the concerns of his neighborhood. And I request and ask that the city denies the appeal and revokes the and upholds the staff hearing officer's decision to revoke the medical marijuana dispensary permit at 3617 State Street on the grounds of concerns of land use issues. Thank you for your time and kind attention.
Thank you. Okay, does anyone need to pull anything off, or is there a motion for the consent calendar?
Madam
Mr.
Mayor,
Hart?
I just had a question about this item. Why is this requiring a time extension?
Ms. Ostrander?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Hart, Tava Ostringer, Assistant City Attorney. We're requesting a time extension so that we can look into and investigate further the fact that it appears the permittees, the management members, no longer hold a lease for the property. The properties and permits are site-specific and can't be transferred. So we're going to hold a hearing with the management members to investigate that and possibly bring these matters together to you at the same time.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a motion for the consent calendar? Moved by Hart, second by White. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. All right, item number 14.
Item 14, subject, applicability of California Voter Participation Rights Act even year election requirements.
Thank you, Mr. Kalan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Paul, can you cue me up? Okay, I think I can do it from here. Madam Mayor, members of the council, in 2015, the state legislature enacted a law that required cities to move to even year elections in certain circumstances. That law made no provision for chartered cities. And the general constitutional law of California is that chartered cities like Santa Barbara have, the term is plenary, meaning full, complete, ultimate control over how they handle their local elections. This summer, oh, wait a minute. No, it's off. I can get it. There we go. This summer, the Attorney General came out with an opinion that raised some significant doubt about that. So, by way of overview, if the city is subject to SB 415, you must transition to even year elections. I don't think you are subject to SB 415. Regardless of my opinion, in December of 2016, the City Council asked me to look at and report back on 3 issues. One was a move to even year elections having nothing to do with SB 415, at least directly. The move to even year elections was viewed as being necessitated by all of the Los Angeles County cities moving to even years, and the company that supported the city in its off-cycle elections was basically going out of business. I think that's probably still the case. Ms. Gorman may be able to comment further on that. So I reported on that. I also reported on mayoral succession issues related to district elections, and I also reported on other types of charter amendments that would be useful to conform the charter to the terms of the settlement in the Banales case, by which the City Council agreed to move to district elections under a California Voting Rights Act case. So attached to your packet is a memo that addresses all of those subjects. Certainly mayoral succession will be an important issue. Today's agenda item isn't really structured to have a discussion on that. I think you can have some limited discussion, but my expectation is that we'll bring back the mayoral succession question in the very near future. So I need to give you a little detail to explain why little old me can disagree with the big old Harvard-educated Attorney General. In SB 415, there are no findings of statewide concern. And under California law, a chartered city's control over municipal affairs, including elections, is plenary, but it can be overruled by the legislature when there is a statewide concern, meaning where the need for uniformity is so persuasive that local control has to give way. SB 415, as you can see, sets out a rule that what it defines as political subdivisions have to hold elections in even years if their previous off-cycle elections have resulted in 25% or fewer votes than voting at the statewide general election. So the statute basically looks at the voting history. I have a slide coming up in a minute, but the city clerk's office prepared a spreadsheet that we worked with in the summer. There's no question that Santa Barbara's local turnout in off-cycle odd-year elections has been more than 25% lower than it has been in even years. So the first question we want to look at is whether a chartered city is a political subdivision within the meaning of SB 415. And I apologize for my turning my back. So SB 415 matches exactly the language of the California Voting Rights Act. That's important because the Attorney General relied heavily on the one major appellate case we have that discussed the Voting Rights Act and concluded that district elections were a matter of statewide concern. Now, the initial clause of both of these statutes is identical, but when you move on to what it lists as examples of political subdivisions, SB 415, the California Voter Participation Rights Act that wants you to go to even year elections, speaks to a city. By way of contrast, the Voting Rights Act is explicitly clear that chartered cities are within its scope. So that's reason number one. And by the way, the Attorney General chooses, in my opinion, not to address this problem. That's reason number one, that the Voting Participation Rights Act should not apply to Santa Barbara unless you wish to go to even year elections on your own. Now, I want to do some justice to the Attorney General's opinion, so I'll take a minute there. The Attorney General concludes that even year elections in local elections in cities are a matter of statewide concern. And the rationale is, I don't know how to describe it, it's almost tautological. It says that because there's more turnout in even years, there is more electoral integrity in elections that happen in even years because more votes means more integrity. That reasoning is purely made up. There's no authority for that. And I really don't believe it's correct. And again, let's think about the right that's at issue and the question of what's a statewide concern. In the Palmdale case, Warigi, we were talking about minority vote dilution. And the issue there was that minority voters in at-large elections were effectively denied the right to participate on an equal footing with non-minority voters. So Warigi and the California Voting Rights Act, which specifically applied to chartered cities, denied people the fundamental right to vote. That is certainly a statewide concern, because the right to vote is not only a statewide concern, it's a national concern, and it's, in effect, a constitutional right. You have to ask yourself, what's the statewide concern here? Well, as I said, the Attorney General says more voters means more integrity, and integrity is a statewide concern. The difficulty with that analysis is that there is never a statewide impact from a local election. There is not a statewide interest in who or how a person might be elected to the Santa Barbara City Council. There is not a statewide interest in how a ballot measure in Santa Barbara might be enacted, because by definition, both of those stop at the city's borders. So I think the Attorney General's reasoning is really difficult to support. Now, having acknowledged that I don't think we're a political subdivision within the meaning of the Voter Participation Rights Act, we need to look at the next operative piece. I talked about it already, and it's the 25% test. Let me try and explain this table. This is in your packet, but for those who may be watching, it might not be entirely clear. What the city clerk's office did, and we didn't have this approximate 51% data until yesterday. In 2015, the turnout was 36%. The statewide four-year average that year was 74.7. 25% less than 74.7 is 56. So by that measure, Santa Barbara was almost 20 points lower than what it would have to be at to meet this 25% test. What that means factually is that the city is experiencing lower voter turnout in off-cycle elections. So the next piece of this becomes maybe speculative, and it's to say that the council has a choice. You can say we don't agree with the Attorney General and we don't want to transition to even year elections. As I mentioned, Martin and Chapman, our support firm, is likely going out of business. I understand as of today that the county will not process an odd year election for us.
Madam Mayor, City Attorney Colon, no, the county would do an off-year election for us. They would not do a special election in April for us. That is the difference.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so it's a possibility to continue with odd years. You would experience lower turnout. So on the assumption that the council might be interested in going to even years, given your direction last December, I've put together what I think is a complete list of the different scenarios. Now, it's very hard to analyze scenarios and be sure you've got everyone pinned down. So if I've missed one, I apologize. It's perfectly possible. So under the Voter Participation Rights Act, which becomes operative January 1, 2018, you must, before January 1, 2018, create what appears to be termed a consolidation plan, and that is a commitment describing how and when you will transition to even year elections so that you are on an even year election track no later than November 8th of 2022. There is a question that I don't know how to handle. It's conceivable that the voters could reject a move to even year elections as they did in 2007. The state legislature is taking care of that, pardon me, under the Voting Rights Act by authorizing cities to move to district elections by ordinance. We don't have that similar grant of authority from the legislature, probably as an aside because they'd never thought this was going to apply to chartered cities. But that's a problem nonetheless. So let's look at the chart. What I concluded is that the sooner you do this, the more options you have. And let's walk through them. What we have at work here, one more factor that is important, and that is the Voting Rights Act settlement with Banyalis requires that the terms of council members elected in 2013 be 4 years. In 2015 be 4 years, and requires that the terms of council members who are elected in 2017 be 4 years, and I think or more. What I think it means is that you can't attempt to shorten the terms of anyone who was elected in 15 or 17. So that constrains your options. Were you to conduct a charter amendment election in 2018, and that can be at a statewide primary election or a statewide general election, state law allows either for a charter amendment, you could shorten 2019 terms to as little as 1 year or to 3 years. That would put the 2019 terms as ending in an even year 2020 or 2022, so that all future elections would be in cycle. Likewise, you could choose to lengthen the 2019 terms to 5 years so that they would end in 2024, and lengthen the 2021 terms by 5 years so that they would end in 2026. All three of those options are available if you run an election in 2018. If you wait until 2019, you really only have the choice of lengthening the elections by 5 years in 2019 and 2021. Now, 2020 is slightly different because as late as 2020, it would be lawful to shorten the terms of people elected in 2021. So you could allow 5 years for the 2019 terms to 2024 and shorten the 21 terms to 1 year ending in 2022. The concern with that one is that it would switch the order of elections. So rather than 1, 2, 3 coming first, as it did in 2015, and 4, 5, 6 coming second, as it did this year, you would be swapping that order. So that's really it. Those are the options available to you. So you have two questions before you that need to be answered by January 1. A, do you want to move to even year elections to satisfy even grudgingly SB 415? And two, if you do, how do you want to do it? So accompanying your packet is a resolution that has some blanks in it. I've suggested that in your packet there's a table at page 8, and it lists the year and options A, B, and C as we have up on the screen. So you would say, I'm interested in 2019 option C. So that's just a little bit of monitoring for your conversation. So I'm happy to answer any questions. And you may wish, you don't have to, but you may wish to start a conversation about mayoral succession. Again, we're not agendized in a way that you can take action on that, but any guidance there for further work would be useful.
Thank you. I don't see any speaker slips on this. Okay, so it's to the council. Mr. Hart.
So I appreciate that you couldn't list out every scenario, but I think the scenario that would accomplish this transition the fastest isn't listed. Is that correct? That would be changing the terms of folks who are elected this year so that they would be up for re-election in 22, and then have the 2019 elections extended to 24. Wouldn't that make the transition the fastest?
Yes, you can lengthen the terms of incumbents. I avoided that because I think that is a core political decision for you to make.
Okay, but it's just not one of the ones. It's not even an option listed in the chart, so we have to kind of create a new.
Yeah.
version of that, if we want to talk about that.
Yes.
Well, just philosophically, I think even year elections are preferable. The more people vote, more people voting is a good thing. It's just that simple to me, and I would like to, I think it's in the interest of the community to have it happen as fast as possible. The nice thing about doing it as fast as possible is that if we have the election in 2018, folks will know what they're voting on, and they'll know that they're choosing to extend terms if that's the decision of the voters. So to me, it seems like a very clean solution, and it gets us to what I think is the desired goal the fastest possible way.
Ms. Murillo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, Mr. Kalan, you're saying that you think we could disagree with the Attorney General, but we're still vulnerable, and if we lose in court, it'll cost us money. Is that what I heard?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I support even year elections too, Madam Mayor. I'm getting more people to vote makes good sense. A one-year term, somebody running for a one-year term doesn't make sense or feel right to me as one of the options. Running for 3 years is a little more understandable. But if people are running and winning the trust of the voters, going from 4 years to 5 is reasonable. Thank you.
Mr. Dominguez.
I have a question about slide 4 and your legal analysis about city. So is it possible that the column on the left, the SB 415, the drafter just consolidated 2 terms, charter city and general law city, into one term, a city, to eliminate extra verbiage?
It's possible, but unlikely. I've reviewed the legislative history, which nowadays consists of the staff analyses presented to the Assembly and the Senate. In both houses or both sides of the legislature, the report noted that charter cities have plenary authority over elections. In the Assembly floor analysis, the staff explicitly said it is unclear whether this measure would apply to chartered cities. So having that analysis and having no response from the legislature, I think is a reasonable inference that they did not intend to apply this to chartered cities. In addition, when the legislature wants to identify a matter of statewide concern, they usually say so in findings in the bill. So they will say that having an accessory dwelling unit in every backyard is a statewide concern because we need housing. So the legislature knows how to do it when they want to, and they didn't here.
The next question I have is in the appendix or table A. You mentioned that the Vinales case, part of the settlement was to have 4-year terms for the 2015 and 2017 electeds. So how would you be able to push that beyond 4 years? And I'm looking at footnote 6 where it says shall be 4 years and until their successors are qualified.
I agree that's an issue. What I would opine is that the purpose of that language was to prevent subsequent action shortening those terms. So I think that extending the term, and this is partially an answer to Councilmember Hart, I think that shortening those terms is a definite no-no. I think extending them probably passes muster under the settlement agreement. It would clearly be safer to allow the 2017 terms to run their course until 2021 without altering them.
And so going back to what the fastest way to get to even years, wouldn't it be extending the 2015 terms, which is what I think Table A may contemplate?
Extending the 2015 terms would present the same problem as extending the 2017 terms as far as the Banyalis agreement is concerned.
So there wouldn't be a problem with state law or charter law. It would just be whether it meets the settlement.
State law says that you can lengthen up to 1 year or shorten by 1 year.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you confirm, I think I'm remembering correctly, both City of Los Angeles recently and the City of Ventura, when they moved to even year election, they also had those who won election have a 5-year term. So when people went to the polls, so it would be option C, I guess, would be what they did when they went to the polls. They knew that those candidates, whoever won, would have a 5-year term.
As to Ventura, I believe you're correct that no incumbent had their term extended.
Right. Okay. Just to put in context in other cities. Okay. Mr. Hotchkiss?
Quick question, if I could. I know the assumption is, or the proof is, that there are more ballots cast on an even year than an odd year. But the argument, at least by some, has always been down ballot is not consistent with the top of the ballot. In other words, it's a presidential election and people mark off maybe down to the senatorial level, but don't mark down ballot. Do we have any statistics, or do we know if down ballots are also completed or not?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Hotchkiss, I don't have any statistics. I will say that the effect of being up ballot in an off-cycle year is a factor that's often considered as a justification for staying in off-cycle odd years.
Right, and I think that, I guess that's a reiteration of that argument, is that, you know, in this case, the mayoral and in the districts rise to the top, and there's very little else there. In this case, latest ballot was only one other thing, was to measure seat. And I think I've argued unsuccessfully, but that the focus, particularly in this latest election, I think is totally on what we do for the city. And as somebody who was running and observing the other candidates, I think they maybe had the same feeling. I don't like to hear from them, but so insofar as the city's interest is concerned, although it may even cost us money, it might be a more rational way of looking at it to stay exclusive, if I can put it that way, and not lump us in on a larger ballot.
Mr. Rouse?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You know, I'm not really very much in favor of moving the goalposts every time we want to get another result, and I think this is another part of that, just like the Voters' Rights Act was. But I also don't have an appetite to be another target for a slam dunk lawsuit, which this may not be that. But, you know, and in terms of the cost of running an off-year election, there's that to consider as well. Fiscal responsibility. I do agree with Mr. Hotchkiss' point is that the off-year elections do allow us to function on, or to focus on, specific city interests, and in other agencies, non-presidential even-year elections do not produce a greater turnout than presidential than off-year non-presidential elections. So, but I don't know. I'm just not really willing to fight City Hall, as the saying goes, on this one. So, and I think the sooner we do it, the better. And just as Mr. Hart said, and just get this, get it clear to the voters of what we're doing, and move on as quickly as possible.
Mr. White?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I agree with my two preceding colleagues that I prefer the off-cycle elections for the very reason that Mr. Hotchkiss raised. However, I also see, I think the handwriting is on the wall that we're headed toward even year. So I don't like the prospect of taking on the litigation that is likely to come. So I also feel like the smoothest transition or the fairest transition is one where the electorate knows what it's doing in terms of electing people and how long they're being elected for. So we have the time to elect people to 5-year terms, and that works well enough for me as a way to, here's what we're laying out, here's what we're going to do, and there are the game's not getting changed midpoint, as it were.
So I'm hearing consensus for different reasons, but there should be on the ballot moving to even year election. I would suggest making it November 2018 just because it's soonest, and if the whole point is voter turnout, November is probably a higher voter turnout than June would be, even though it's a statewide primary, but typically that's what I think the numbers show. I would agree that the cleanest way moving forward, and we've seen other cities do it, is option C, because that way people are used to hearing about 4-year terms, but if it's a one-time 5-year term, they know that going in during the whole campaign. Everyone running knows that it's for 5 years. It's moving that even year process over. It takes a transition to make it work anyway. That would be, I think, the way we can get the question answered in 2018 as soon as possible, and then just be as transparent and upfront with the voters as possible, being option C. Why don't we take care of this first? I know Mr. Kahlon gave us the opportunity, if we wanted to discuss other items in that memo, we could, but get this settled, because I had a couple of other questions about the memo as well, but let's take care of this first. So that would be my suggestion, a November 2018 ballot measure for option C. So, Mr. Hart?
I'm still unclear about the constraints of the Benalis decision. Does that, you said, I thought at one point that you could lengthen terms, but you can't shorten terms. So I think that needs to be really clear for everybody.
That's my opinion, but it is, there's a counter argument. So I'm very, very strong opinioned about the Attorney General's error. Mm-hmm. I am much less confident that Banyales would allow you to extend. I know Banyales would not allow you to shorten.
Okay. Well, the decision that we're making now is to set in motion later resolution of all of these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
We would actually be putting the ballot measure on in 2018, and so the next council would be doing that. So in the interest of, finding...
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Hart, that's not quite correct. The statute requires that the council, the phrase is adopt a plan mm-hmm. to cause the elections to be at even years by November 8, 2022. Mm-hmm. So I think it is incumbent on you to put some dates in there. There will be nothing to stop the successor council from changing those dates.
Okay. Well, that's sort of the same thing, but I understand the difference. And we could have the most consensus now, or we could have it less specific, because I think it's a plan would still be, we're going to have an election in 2018 to move city elections to even years. That seems like that would be sufficient to have a plan for the purposes of avoiding a lawsuit, and then we could have the discussion between now and January 1st to more definitively determine those dates, or we could do those dates now, or we could leave those dates up to the future council. Isn't that right?
Well, certainly you can do what you wish, Councilmember Hart, but I really believe that SB 415 requires you to pin it down. And let me read the language. It might be helpful. So it says you have to transition to even years unless a political subdivision may hold an election other than on a statewide election date if by January 1, 2018, the political subdivision has adopted a plan to consolidate a future election with a statewide election not later than November 8, 2022. So I think that plan, reading the statute with its intent in mind, I think they want you to pin down dates. And again, the purpose of adopting that plan is that it precludes somebody suing us. As I mentioned in the memo, this lawsuit would be substantially less expensive than Banyales because the city would concede the fact that we are returning fewer than 25% less than the general elections. So the only question would be the legal determination of whether there's statewide concern. So it'd be a lawsuit, we'd spend money, but it's not going to be on the order of magnitude of the 800,000+ we spent on Banyalis in attorney's fees.
Mr. Hotchkiss?
Okay, I'm a little confused. The first time, I think in your presentation, you said that you didn't think the AG's argument held water, or at least there were a lot of holes in the bottom of the bucket. Am I correct?
And that's, yes, Councilmember Hotchkiss, you're correct, and that's what I'm saying now. Okay. I have taken an unusually strident position about the Attorney General's work because I find it disappointing. We have typically been able to rely on the Attorney General for very solid, very apolitical work, and I don't think that's what we got here.
Well, I think it was pretty political, but in any case, a couple of my colleagues had said that they based their decision on the likelihood that litigation would be likely to come. Do you agree with that assessment, or are we saying if it does, we're going to be okay?
I agree with it because there are what I would very casually call bounty hunter rewards for people who do bring this kind of litigation.
Okay, but you at least are confident in our position?
I would have no difficulty giving you a formal litigation opinion that we are in a position to strongly defend against the applicability of SB 415.
Okay, so at least two of you might want to reconsider how you're voting, because if in fact we really do want to leave it with on the off years where it does get the full focus of voter attention, that really would be a preferable way of going if we are, I think, relatively safe, as Mr. Kahlon has said.
Mr. Dominguez?
So I throw out there the idea of going into closed session if we're going to adopt any of the options that might incur either of the litigation. And just to make it clear, option C in 2018, there would be no threat of litigation?
Correct.
No reasonable threat?
Correct.
Okay.
Ms. Murillo?
Thank you. And if I'm just asking what people have been asking, I just need to get it clear in my head. So, Mr. Kahlon, option C would avoid a Banyalis problem because the people elected in 2015 and 2017 would be able to do 4 years.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Murillo, that's absolutely right.
And then option C also addresses the fact that the consultant who gives us the election machines for odd year, they're losing customers for odd year or off year. I hear those terms both. So they're going out of business. Is that accurate? Or
Ms. Schmidt? So it would go to the county again, I think, or Ms. Gorman? It would go to the county to run the election in 2019 and 2021.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I'm sorry, I was just answering.
Okay.
And if there's no outside agency to do the election, the county could still run the election in 2019 and 2021. Is that correct?
That's correct, Madam Mayor and council members.
Okay. And so we need the voters to approve this because of the charter city status. So that would be the primary next year, 2018, or November 2018. And we're assuming there will be more turnout in November. And so option C, we still have November of 2018 is still enough time for that. Mr. Kahlon, I guess I'm just trying to get all my ducks in a row.
Yeah, November 2018, I mentioned, all I can say about it is it gives you the most options if you do it in November 2018.
And I like the way that Councilmember White phrased it, was that the voters would know what they're voting for, and the term of the person that person would get. So
we'd like to make a motion then?
Yes, ma'am. I'll move option C.
Option C in November 2018. Is that
In November 2018.
okay? Okay. So the motion is to put in the resolution a charter amendment to the ballot in November 2018 to reflect the terms listed in option C, and it's seconded by Dominguez. Okay, Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And there could be added to that, or part of that, the argument against that ballot measure could be sort of an allusion to what Mr. Colon is talking about, that we're a charter city and this may not apply to us, and we might be able to defend our position. But so that at least it would be a for and against argument that, at least what I'm hearing from Mr. Colon, would be legally defensible. But at least it would be a...
Mr. Colon?
Madam Mayor, and Councilmember White, in the attachment at the very end of your report, right before tab 15, I took the liberty of expressing the council's unhappiness with being told what to do on this issue.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hotchkiss.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Does that require a 50% plus one voter approval?
Yes.
And if that is not achieved, what happens?
I don't know. One scenario is that we are then subject to litigation, but we're reserving our rights to defend.
Well, it essentially leaves us where we are now, right? If the voters don't approve it.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Although I would add a defense that we complied with the law by adopting a plan, and the law makes no provision for voter disapproval. So, legislature, until you empower us to do the unthinkable and allow the council to amend the charter without a vote of the people, we're stuck.
Okay.
Mr. Dominguez?
What is the fiscal impact on this decision? Is there a difference or a significant difference in cost in having a 2018 election that we pay the county to run versus 2019 that we pay the county to run?
Mr. Casey?
Yeah, Madam Mayor and council members, Sarah Gorman, our clerk, ran some numbers on that. The county will run an election, whether it's an even year or odd year. It will cost us more to contract with the county in an odd year because they wouldn't be running an election otherwise. So if the elections move to even years, there are cost savings to the city. It's on the magnitude of $200,000 or $300,000 of cost savings.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Murray, did you have something else? Your light's on. No? Okay. All right, so we have a motion and a second. It's for a November 2018 charter amendment question on the ballot with option C. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, 6-1 Hotchkiss opposed. Before we leave this item, yes, Mr.
Madam Mayor, I want to make it clear that we have the resolution in the packet, so the council's vote was to adopt the resolution
Correct.
with those dates.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, and I just want to throw out, since Mr. Colon gave us the opportunity, and this is obviously a question for next year's council about succession planning. We're not agendized to opine on this, but I had two thoughts. One was I trust our city attorney, and I know there's been a lot of discussion about an appointment process, and that's been in the press and news, and I would certainly agree with that. There probably should be, if we're going, now that we voted to do put something on the November 2018 ballot, an opportunity to have some cleanup language in other parts of the charter, and that would be next year's council's process, to work that out. It may also be an opportunity, and perhaps to look into an idea that other cities in this state and other states in the country have adopted, which is what's known as instant runoff voting or ranked choice voting as a way to elect your mayor and council members. This is something where voters would put, their number one choice is this person, then that and then number two is that person, and it's an instant runoff on the same day where you finally get the person who's elected to get 50% plus one of the vote. There's an easy way to describe it, but I didn't do it very well. But I know that up in the Bay Area, and there's quite a few cities that do that. But just in observation of certainly this election, but many others, has been trying to want to get people out to vote for something and wanting to vote, what you want, and yet there's all these decision-making processings of how you get to that decision. And if you're able to put out your choices in ranked order, that might increase voter participation in local elections. So I just throw that out there, and I know it's been some conversation out in the community as well about it, but that might be an opportunity for next year's council to look at. So just a parting thought as we go. Mr. Rouse?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Actually, I agree that we could discuss that, or the new council can discuss that technique. But in terms of succession planning, I would like to see this council address it before the end of the year, only because we were the council when district elections were implemented. So this is kind of putting a bow on the entire thing. It's something that certainly should have been anticipated, some kind of formula or technique, and we have to have some definition as opposed to options on what we're going to do about the succession plan. So I would like to see if we could, well, first of all, I'd like to make a motion for the council to address this in an agenda item upcoming within this year while this council is still seated.
Okay, is there a second for that?
I'll second it.
Okay.
And then what I would say, Mr. Casey, if there was room somewhere on an agenda, I know we've got stuff we've got to wrap up by the end of the year, but I would like to present the future council with that at least tied up in more of a neat little package.
Mr. Kalan?
Madam Mayor, there's a practical consideration that you may want to consult with Mr. Casey or Ms. Schmidt, and it is this. If my opinion is correct, the vacancy in Councilmember Murillo's seat will occur on January 9 when she takes office as mayor. The charter says that you have 30 days to make an appointment. In my prior experience, the councils wanted some kind of process to help them identify an appropriate appointee. I think that it would be hard to wait until January 10th to begin a process for submitting resumes and interviews, however you want to do it. Right. So I do think the sooner the council can give us direction on that, the better.
So let me ask, Mr. Casey, you and I were going over agenda stuff recently, and December 5th may be a lighter agenda than the other two. And could we bring the question back, as well as, if agreed upon, council initiate the process, meaning if people want to apply, who's eligible, what the timeline is? I believe we did that when Doss Williams moved over to the Assembly before he left in December because that's when his term started up in Sacramento. This is different because it's January. But we started the process early on, so it was in that 30 days. So we were able to appoint Mr. Rouse, actually, within that 30-day period. But would that work in terms of coming back with the question, as the motion said, and if approved, initiate that process?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. Maybe Mr. Rouse could kind of clarify the motion, but I think staff would be prepared. I think December 5th is a good day to bring this item back if you so choose to do, and staff could be prepared to bring back an option of how you would go about filling the vacancy. We would model it on the way we did it back in 2009, which was essentially a fairly informal application opportunity, then followed by interviews in front of City Council and then selection within that 30-day time period. I agree with Mr. Kalan that if there's an interest to kind of get that started, getting direction on December 5th so that people could know to start applying and be ready and teed up to go towards the end of January, that would be helpful.
Mr. Rouse?
Do you need clarification?
I think your motion was to come back with a process of
exactly
of appointment, and so if that should move forward, then you'll have a plan in place ready to go. Okay.
Bingo.
And was it Mr. White or Mr. Hotchkiss seconded? Mr. Hotchkiss seconded. Okay. Ms. Murillo.
Question for Mr. Kalan. So we received an email from the District Elections Committee that they're wanting an election, not an appointment process. So would you be ready on December 5th to respond to that communication?
Yes, I have analyzed it, and I touch on it in the memo in your packet.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, so we know what the motion is? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's unanimous. All right, thank you. All right. We're on to item number 15.
Item 15, subject, authorization for agreement for legal services with Burke, Williams, and Sorensen LLP.
Whose item is?
That is mine,
It's
Madam Mayor.
It's the city attorney show.
And we do have a closed session later this afternoon to discuss this case. The Santa Barbara Association of Realtors has sued the city, claiming that the zoning inspection report program violates the Fourth Amendment rights of people who have zoning inspection reports. This is a case that we would love to handle in-house, but we're not in a position to, given current workload. I'm seeking authority to retain outside counsel. We have extensively analyzed the case already. I'll be prepared to talk to you about that later this afternoon. Suffice it to say, we vehemently disagree that there's ever been any kind of Fourth Amendment violation by the city.
Okay, and I don't see any speaker slips on this, so it's to the council for the item 15.
Oh.
Mr. White?
Madam Mayor, I'd support the request and move the staff recommendation.
Okay, moved by White, second by Rouse. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay, item number 16.
Item 16, subject, contract for construction of the Cabrillo Pavilion Arts Center and Bathhouse renovation project.
Thank you, Ms. Zachary.
Mayor Schneider, members of the City Council, Jill Zachary, Parks and Recreation Department. I have with me here today Mike Wiltshire from the Public Works Department, who's working with us on the project. Bob Samario, Finance Director, to also answer any finance questions. And then also Don Ziemer and Julie Wendt from KBZ Architects, who are the architects for our project. We have a number of members in the public that are part of our campaign and on our commission, including B.B. Longstreet, Mary Louise Days, Ed Edick, and Sue Adams, that are also available to make remarks or answer questions that you have. So we've been talking about and working on renovation for the Cabrillo Pavilion for a number of years, and we all remember the wonderful gift that we received 90 years ago, and the central role that the building plays in coastal recreation in Santa Barbara. Renovation of this building will achieve a number of key objectives for the community. It will preserve its historic integrity. It will create a modern community recreation and social center that's safe, accessible, and usable. It will allow the Parks and Recreation Department to collaborate with others and expand activities, programs, and camps. It'll allow us to also go back to supporting sporting events and outdoor education on a scale that we haven't been able to in a number of years. The project itself will also enhance coastal access and beach recreation, and that's one of the key objectives that we have. And as it has in the past, it will provide a very special, public, affordable beachside gathering and special event venue. The pavilion, as I mentioned, is 90 years old. And as a result of its age and the incredible love it's received from many people over the years, it requires a full-scale renovation. It has antiquated and failing systems, and as a result, the project includes replacing all of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and communication building systems. We need to address structural, seismic, fire protection, and extensive accessibility upgrades. We will be renovating all of the interior spaces. Particularly the first floor will change rather dramatically to meet today's needs for recreation and social venues. And then we'll also provide the kind of accessibility that's expected in today's public buildings, both interior and exterior, with upgrading the walkways, the promenade, the landscaping, the elevator, and then to site safety, improving our site lighting, and then back to the beach access, installing a beach boardwalk, which is one of the most popular features of some of the things that we're doing for this building. As I mentioned, we've been working on this project for a number of years, starting in 2000, then 2011, and then skipping ahead to 2014, getting to the point we were ready to go out to bid, which we did in early August of this year. We had a fairly broad bidding period. We had bidding period for, I believe, close to 8 weeks, 7 or 8 weeks. In addition to a mandatory bid walk, we had an open house, and we provided prospective contractors with the opportunity to go to the building at any time. We wanted to be sure that they had the most opportunity to really understand and know the type of work that needed to occur at the pavilion. When we received our bids, the bids in, we had a low bid of $11.8 million from USS Cal Builders, which they subsequently requested to withdraw due to a $3 million error on their bid total, which is significant. And then our next two lower bids, and I would say that USS Cal Builders is from Orange County, so is the one firm that came from outside of the Santa Barbara area, with the other two being local firms, Diani Building Corporation and Frank Skipper Construction. You'll see at the bottom of the slide our engineer's estimate, which was the estimate as of July 31st, 2017. That was the 100% estimate. When we do a project like this, part of the scope of work for the architects and engineers is to give us estimates as we move along in the project. So this was the final 100%, all 170 pages of the plans or whatever it added up to, at about $14.7 million, with a plus or minus range of 10 to 25%. So as you can see, with looking at that and then looking at the next low bid, which is Diani Building Corporation, that represents about 11.6% above our engineer's estimate. So it is within that realm. Given the bids that we received, staff spent quite a bit of time sort of researching into the bids, in addition to contacting the bidders and sort of getting a better idea of what they were thinking and planning and had proposed as part of the project. We heard back, number one, complexity, the extent of the renovation, essentially practically a rebuild of a coastal facility that's 22,000 square feet right on the beach. Its historic features, which we all love and cherish, but also can bring some extra complexity, and the construction climate, which is something that the city and others have been experiencing as construction has become more competitive. It's taken into consideration with the bids that they provided to us in terms of what they were able to put forward as a bid. We also evaluated rescoping the project, and that's something that does happen on occasion. We look at the different project elements. We look at whether it's feasible to remove those elements. We looked at things such as eliminating or reducing certain site improvements, such as restoring the stoa, which is the covered walkway next to the playground, which used to be the saltwater wading pool. We also looked at scaling back the promenade, not building the low wall, eliminating site lighting, scaling back the landscaping, looking at other aspects of the interior of the project. And the concerns that came from that is, number one, we'd go back to design review for any change, so it would be review after final. We would probably reduce the potential for fundraising. There are certain aspects of the project that are resonating well with community members, and it could affect the project's success and not enable us to achieve the type of site safety and building operations that we would to successfully operate it. We also looked at rebidding the project, and I would also say under evaluating rescoping and evaluating rebidding, we looked at the time delay associated with both of those tasks and their risk of delaying and then going out to bid and having the construction climate be just as or more competitive, and perhaps not even resulting in a bid that's much lower or a firm that is as qualified in moving the project forward. We also, once again, revisited sort of why we're doing this project. It's been a top project and a key focus of Parks and Recreation in the city for a number of years. We've taken every step to move forward to come up with what we believe is the best project that will allow us to serve the community for the next 75 years is our goal. And then also through the renovation process and now even through the campaign process, remembering and realizing and having reinstated by the individuals that we interact with just what a public resource it is and how special it is to so many different people for so many different reasons. And over the generations, the experiences that are relayed as we reach out into the community about the project and about fundraising, all sorts of neat stories come forward. And we actually have a great opportunity to put together a story of the Cabrillo Pavilion that I think will serve the community well into the future as well. And in addition to being key to Santa Barbara's coastal identity, it's in a condition and a configuration that really does not allow us to provide the kind of services that we can do and that we would be able to do if it was renovated. So in looking at the estimated total project cost, considering the low bid of $16.7 million, we have an estimated total project cost now of just over $20 million. That does include funds that have already been expended for project design. The first line in that table show the money that's been spent to date to get to where we are, just over $1 million, and that's design, project management, permits over the last 3.5 years. And then it shows what we would anticipate would be other costs associated with construction moving forward, which brings it to 19.2 moving forward, of which we've already expended just over $1 million. When we look at project funding, these are the funds that are currently appropriated and available for construction. So as I mentioned in the last slide, we have already spent some of the redevelopment agency funds to get to where we are today. We have $8.5 million left. We have just over $1 million, 1.14 from the Refugio oil spill settlement. And then we also have general fund capital allocations that have been made over the past couple of years. It started out as $1 million and we're down to, we have 750. So that brings us to just over $10.4 million that's ready to be encumbered for this project. We have a capital campaign plan for $4 million. That's something that we tested through our feasibility study, and I'll have a slide after this one to talk a little bit about where we are with that, which brings us to just under 14.5 and a shortfall of 4.8 moving forward. So the capital campaign, back when the city did its infrastructure financing task force work, it's now 10 years old, this was one of the projects that was identified as a key opportunity for a public-private partnership, and we've been staying on that focus ever since and looking at ways that we can engage the community investing in this building. It's a legacy for many people. It's a legacy for people already today, but moving forward, an opportunity to have a legacy for the future. To that end, Council approved moving forward with a campaign in June. We have made a lot of progress. We have a robust campaign cabinet. We have a number of committees that are working on communications, identifying prospects, reaching out and beginning to fundraise. And it's really comprised of a number of highly regarded Santa Barbarans that are committed to its renovation, and they each bring to that campaign a different perspective. We've also done quite a bit of work with our campaign consultant, identifying viable foundations and private prospects, and begun that process in meeting with foundations and exploring their interest and desire to support the project. So we believe we're in a very good place as far as the campaign is concerned. Other funding sources, we've also been, re-energized a little bit with the idea that there might be a voter approval of a state park bond in June 2018. In the past, that has been a great source of funds for us to do per capita related projects in a number of our parks. Assuming voter approval, that this project would be highly viable for moving that forward. It's highly viable for grant funds because it is ready to go. There's no question anymore that we're going to do it. We are going to do it, and that often puts an agency in a better position. And then we have local sources, and then the Coastal Conservancy has come forward and helped us in the past, and we'll be reaching out to them again. And then looking into the future as we prepare for the FY19 budget, looking at potential capital fund appropriations from the general fund. So with that, the staff recommendation is that Council accept USS Cal Builders' request to withdraw, award a contract with Diani Building Corporation in their low bid amount of $16.7 million, and also authorize the Public Works Director to execute the contract and approve expenditures up to 10% or 1.6 to cover any cost increases. That concludes the staff presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. I do have some speaker slips here. A number of people from the cabinet are here, so thank you for being here. But we have Ed Edick and then B.B. Longstreet. Mr. Edick?
Fine, I get to go first. Good afternoon. Thanks for having me. As Helene said, I am one of the cabinet members, co-chair with Helene and Sue Adams. We're excited about this. Without overstating the obvious, I mean, it's an incredible asset. It's on the beach. I look at my ex-planning commissioner friend, could we ever build something on the beach again on that side of Cabrillo? I don't think so. With my real estate hat on, it's a really valuable asset. Personally, I used it as a child. My mother would drop me off there to go to the beach. I went to events when I was in high school, and for a couple of decades I used a locker downstairs when I played volleyball in East Beach. So I've got a real history. My son has used it. My grandson has not. I'd like my grandson to enjoy that, and I'd like all the children and grandsons of the city for the next 7 decades. Is that what we're talking about? 7 decades to use it. I just think it's an incredible asset. I'm disappointed. I think we're all disappointed. I've spoke with Jill and the other members about the extra cost. Having been involved with some building projects, you don't usually see them coming under budget. Hopefully we can absorb it. Hopefully we can raise more money. But I think we're, as a campaign and one of the chairs of the committee, I think we're really excited. And everybody that we've talked to about it so far, and it's somewhat preliminary, is real excited because it is such a great asset on our doorstep. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but thank you so much for considering it.
Thank you. It's the exact same locker, right? That's in the bathhouse now that you used from.
It's still there, yeah.
The exact same locker.
It hasn't moved.
Rusted.
Yeah.
Really needs upgrading.
Number 12.
Okay.
It was number 12. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Longstreet.
B.B. Longstreet. I'm chair of the Parks and Recreation Commission this year, and I've been on the commission for 22 years. And we've been talking about the Cabrillo Arts Pavilion for 22 years. If we don't go forward now, to me, it is the death of that building. It won't happen again. We won't ever get this far down the planning road. We won't have this many pieces of the puzzle in place. And we'll end up with another Franceschi house. We've seen this happen before. So, yes, we know it's going to come in at more expensive, but we look at the climate in our state this year as far as large building. Look at cheap money. We know it's going to just cost more in 2 years. There's nothing that's going to change. This is about accessibility for the community. It's bringing a building back to life. If we look at the whole systems of that building, it's everything. We're getting a new gem. And all we have to look at is the Carrillo Rec Center and what that renovation did and how that building came back to life to know that now's the time we need to move forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's to the council. Mr. White.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, I want to thank the folks that have stepped up to participate in the fundraising. Thank you, Ed and team. That's a key ingredient. We can look back at the Children's Library as an example of the public-private partnerships that are core now, I think, to local government just in this era. So I appreciate that it's just putting the community's money where our policy mouth is. And so from that perspective, I think that's an essential ingredient. We now have the Measure C as our backup, so that this project will not only get started, but it will get done. And clearly it is a linchpin of the city's public recreation, parks, facilities, of our identity. And at the right time, I'd love to make a motion to approve this.
Mr. Hart?
I agree wholeheartedly. Want to thank the members of the committee for their work. This is going to be a spectacular project, and I'm really, frankly, pleased that we have a local, really well-respected quality contractor, too, that's going to do this work, because we want to build this right the first time and have it last another 100 years. I know Deani has some union subcontractors involved in that work, and I think this is really going to be a spectacular project.
Ms. Maria?
Thank you. I was down there recently decompressing, and there's people of all income levels. It is accessible to everyone, and it's a place where famous people get married. I've been down there and sort of crashed someone's wedding. Well, you're there, and so there's somebody having a wedding, and it turned out that it was an actor and a movie actor, and they had this big. It was a real fancy wedding, and so it's also a place where people start their lives of marriage and love. And so I'm really excited to vote for this. Thank you.
Great. Mr. White, did you want to make a motion?
Yes, I would move the staff recommendation for contracting with the construction of the Cabrillo Arts Pavilion.
Second.
Okay, and that's item A as well, about withdrawing the Cal Builders. Okay.
A and B.
A and B. Okay. Anything else? Looking forward to it. So now we have all the pieces in place. Let's go capital campaign and make this happen. So all in favor? Aye. Fantastic. Okay, that's unanimous. We have 4 o'clock for interviews for boards and commissions, but perhaps we can get 1 or 2 closed sessions done. So maybe if you could read the closed sessions, and then we'll do as many as we can. We'll be back here at 4.
Item 18, subject conference with city attorney, existing litigation is described in item 18. Item 19, subject conference with city attorney, anticipated litigation is described in item number 19. Item 20, subject conference with city attorney, existing litigation as described in item 20.
Great, we'll do as many as we can.
Thank you.
Call the City Council meeting back to order. Just to let people know, we got through all 3 closed session items. There's nothing to report on those, but we did get through all 3 of them. And so we are now at item number 17.
Item 17, subject interviews for city advisory groups.
Great. So thank you all for being here and applying for various boards and commissions. This is our first of 3 interview opportunities. I'm going to do what I normally do and go through each board or commission by name. I'll go alphabetically. If you hear the board or commission you've applied for, please come on up to the podium, state your name, why you're interested in being appointed. If you are an incumbent and you'd like another term, perhaps talk a little bit about your experience and why you want to be reappointed. And if you've applied for more than one, you can come up once when you hear your first item that you, board or commission you applied for, and you can talk about all 2 or 3 of them, however many you applied for. So we may have questions. We a lot of times don't have questions up here, but we may follow up between now and when we do appointments to applicants. So don't take that personally if there are no questions. It's just a pretty typical process. But again, thank you for taking the time to volunteer your services to the City of Santa Barbara in very many ways. So we will start with the Access Advisory Committee. If there's anyone here who's an applicant for that, please come on up and state your name. We'll get you started.
Hi, my name is Jacob Yesselberg, and first I want to say whenever I speak, I have a speech impediment, so I gave you all copies of my remarks. My name is Jacob Yesselberg, and I'm here to apply to the city's Access Advisory Committee. For the past 4 years, I have been the community organizer with the Independent Living Resource Center. For my work, I have brought people with disabilities together to advocate for issues such as more accessible housing and transportation. I also plan many events designed to educate the community on topics such as building civic engagement and disability culture. Many of the events that I plan and advocacy that I undertake would not be possible if I didn't work in collaboration with community partners. If I'm appointed to the Access Advisory Committee, I would seek to bring more collaboration to the committee, from soliciting feedback from residents to doing outreach and community events. I see a lot of ways that the community can be better integrated into the life of the city. Despite sitting on Parks and Rec Commission, I feel that I have the time and passion for their commitment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? And thank you for your service on the Parks and Recreation Commission thus far. Okay, go ahead. Next.
Yes.
Hello.
My name is Victor Sir, and I'm a Housing Authority Commissioner.
I know, but we haven't gotten to Housing Authority yet. So when we get to Housing Authority, come on up at that point. Anyone else for Access Advisory Committee? There you go. Good afternoon.
Hi, Mayor Schneider, members of the City Council. My name is Bob Burnham. I am a current member of the Access Advisory Committee. I am totally blind, been blind since birth, and I've lived and worked in Santa Barbara for 47 years. If appointed, I am willing and able to devote the time and energy to serve on this committee. Ever mindful that our committee is, we serve in an advisory capacity. I have striven in my years of service to help all of us, not only on the committee, but in the disabled community, to become more proactive in being involved in dialogue with our support staff, in increasing accessibility for people with all different disabilities, in programs, services, public rights of way, and like I said, to work in coordination with city staff. I have a basic knowledge of the codes and the ADA, the Rehab Act of 1973 and all that, but my experience is more with the consultation in the use of assistive services and technology, and experience representing and resolving accessibility issues for people with a broad range of disabilities. I mean, we cover ADA parking issues, curb cuts, more accessibility on websites for people with text-to-speech screen reading software for people with low vision or completely blind. So that's my basic range of experience working not just with blind people, but people with all different disabilities. We just installed the hearing loops around the city, which greatly helps people hard of hearing, hoping to develop a what's it called, reverse 911 for people that are totally deaf. Been working on that. Why do I want to serve? Well, I enjoy drawing people out by asking the right questions and validating their points of view regardless of their differences. So I really enjoy just improving a dialogue among us and our city staff, mindful of their constraints, both financially and in human power. And I feel mandated to continue assisting in so much good work that's already begun. We have much hard work ahead, but my personal goal, a couple of them, is to communicate better with our support staff between meetings, to prioritize and agendizing items that need attention, but again, ever mindful of staff and their constraints. So it's a great committee, being involved in these projects to increase accessibility for all of our citizens. So I would appreciate being reappointed, and I am devoted to continue serving. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for your past service. Great. Anyone else for the Access Advisory Committee?
Hello, Mayor and council members. My name is Jim Marston. I have a long history of engineering background and also working in the academic field on disability, serving on different boards, knowing the ADA and the California Building Code inside out. All that stuff is on my application. I don't want to bore you with my background, if I may. I joined the board a year ago, filling out a term, and I was honored by my peers at the beginning of this year to be elected chairman of the AAC. It's been a very productive year. We have a new appointed ADA coordinator, Mike Wilshire, who's been very supportive of helping us move forward, getting more input. Let's see, we now have more input on the agenda items. We have a better way of taking minutes. We have a new website link that we, committee members, can actually suggest things to be put on our website. It's been the same for 20 years or 15, and now it's growing. We also have now audio files on our website. The committee actually, a lot of the work they do is trying to get the needs of accessible people to other entities, such as different city departments. And in that context, we've been working with the Parks and Recs Department, the Parking Department. We just looked at the valet parking ordinance. And so we're now being, I think, considered more of a stakeholder in the needs of the whole accessible community, or the access community. I do have a list of, you mentioned there might be a question on what we've done. I have a whole list here of things. I don't know if we have time, if you want me to, or do I have time? I'll read off just some of
maybe one or two.
Okay. We worked on communications problems for the whole city and also for disabled people. We meet probably twice a year with the engineering department to look at infill for sidewalks and for repairs and for curb cuts. We've done parking updates on ADA. We looked with the Park District on the off-leash parking at off-leash dog areas at Mackenzie Park and different infrastructure problems. Overview of the city buildings, ADA transition plans, and I'll stop there. But I would appreciate being reappointed as I'm a chairman now, and I think we're really on the move. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hotchkiss has a question.
Quick question, communications, what did you do specifically?
We talked with people from the fire department and the emergency staff to try to figure out how to get more communication. If I remember correct, there's still not enough text-to-speech on the TV networks. We're trying to figure out how to get information to those who can't see and those who can't hear.
Did you come up with anything?
We only had suggestions. It's up to funding, again, as Bob said. But we're trying to work on that. It's one of our continuing goals to try to improve that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else for Access Advisory? Okay. Airport? Come on up. Good afternoon.
Hi. My name is Greg Brown, and I was informed that there's a vacancy on the Airport Commission. Just like to apply for it. And just to let you know, I worked for United Airlines for 8 years, back in the 60s, 70s. And here's my United Airlines badge, for instance. And this also has to do with construction around the airport, so I'm aware of how to be a contractor, because here's my contractor state license, if you know what I mean. And anyway, I brought in my the shirt that you wear after you do a solo. You know, I surviving the solo, so I am a pilot as well. Anyway, I just simply like to serve on the commission, period. I think I could use some of those skills of knowing about the airport a little bit. And even, I think there's something on your agenda was to work with High Sierra, because I've been in communication with him a little bit. And we were trying to get the helicopter at the airport. Well, that flew over. That didn't happen, but at least been in communication with him.
Great. Well, thank you for applying. Any questions, Mr. Hotchkiss?
Quick question, did you say you're a pilot as well?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I left my license at my seat back there.
Great. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't have many hours, like 120 or whatever.
More than mine. So.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And when who was it? The Kennedy died in that plane accident many years ago. A bunch of us small pilots figured out pretty much out what happened to him, and why he did it. So I just keep my eyes on things like that.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Great. Anyone else for the Airport Commission? Okay. Architectural Board of Review? Okay. Arts Advisory Committee? Come on up.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, why don't you move the mic down a little bit there. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. Yep.
My name is Molly Ann Lakin. I'm a hit songwriter and a consultant to developing artists all over the world. I live in Santa Barbara, and I have a lifetime of creative experience to bring to the city. Not only do I write songs, but I also write prose, and over the past several years, I've written columns for the late news press, The Beacon, and Ed Hatt about local artists. And I love interacting with artists in all disciplines, and I think we can all feed on each other and inspire each other. And I've been thinking a lot about how I can create something with the help of the committee so that Santa Barbara is not just a a lovely place where people do art. But as Georgia O'Keeffe said in her movie, look at the mountains and the sky. Your work is half done. All you have to do is pick up your paintbrush. So I would like to bring together people in all of the arts and have us brainstorm and create a lasting legacy for the city.
Great. Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Come on up. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, mayors and council members.
Well, you can put the mic up so you don't have to. There you go.
There we go. That's a little too high. My name is Joseph Frederick Jenka. I'm very much willing and able to devote the necessary time to serve on the Arts Advisory Committee if appointed. I'm familiar with the committee and have attended several meetings during my time as Director of Development at the Museum of Contemporary Art, Santa Barbara. I believe that my strong and diverse experience, specifically in contemporary art, having worked as a curator, gallery director, and museum professional, will make me successful in serving. Not only am I Santa Barbara native, but I have spent almost 20 years combined in Chicago, Mexico City, and New York City working in the arts. I would like to be appointed to the City Advisory Group to be able to contribute to the economic prosperity and enhanced quality of life in Santa Barbara that the arts provide, and to have the opportunity to give back to my community that has made a significant impact on my life. As a millennial and a Latino, I am eager to contribute my unique perspective, ideas, and expertise. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Schneider and City Council members. My name is Kai Tepper, and I am a born and bred Santa Barbara native as well. For the past 10 years, I've spent a lot of time in the arts nonprofit sector. I currently serve on a number of different arts and culture committees, many of which serve the purpose of reviewing grants for funding performing arts and visual arts programs in the city. And as well as the county. I value teamwork and collaboration and have a great track record on collaborative projects. I am one of the lead organizers in the Pianos on State project, which would not be possible without the support of the City of Santa Barbara. Let's see, what else can I say? As someone who has benefited greatly from public education and public art and culture experiences in this town, I'm dedicated to serving this community to my best capacity. I'm very interested in bridging pathways between groups that would not otherwise be working together, and I see that there is an opportunity to further educate the public about opportunities through this from the city, while also continuing to be an advocate for the arts and culture community. I'm interested in learning more about how the city can support the arts and culture community in this town. I truly believe that arts and culture can be a tool for social change. Through the work that I do in the nonprofit sector, I've recognized that there's a tendency for groups to maybe work in silos. And one thing that I see a potential for is working in guidance with the city could help kind of bridge those silos from happening. I believe that the City of Santa Barbara can be the collective voice of the arts and culture community, and it is a way to ensure that we continue to have a vibrant and thriving community. I would be grateful for the opportunity to serve on the Arts Advisory panel, and I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Any questions? No? And thank you for Pianos on State. Those are always fun. Anyone else? Arts Advisory, come on up.
Hi, Robert Adams, current chair of Arts Advisory, and I want to be reappointed to yet another term. I like to think that the 6 years I've already served has helped promote the arts. That's what I love. I'm a landscape architect by profession, but I keep my feet in the arts and just love the culture and also the economic and social benefits that come from promoting arts. One of the programs I'm really excited about is the grant program every year, money that we get from the city to give to different arts groups. And what I've seen is a kind of growth from just, visual art into literary arts and performing arts. So I'm glad to see that expand. I've also obviously been involved in staff transition, and that's been a little challenging, but it's turning out great, and we have a wonderful committee. Anyway, I just want to serve 4 more years. Do you have any questions?
Any questions? Mr. Dominguez.
So your information in the packet says you've served 7 years, which is correct, 6 or 7?
I think 7. I filled in a term earlier, and then I had a full term. That ended, so I'm looking for another term.
Okay. And I think in general we try to focus on having people serve 2 terms. Is there a reason we should consider having a 3rd term for you?
Yeah, just because I'm one of those people that's been on for a long time. I have institutional memory. I'm a good leader. I keep the meetings short and sweet, hopefully, and important, and promote that. Yeah, so that's what I would say.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Hotchkiss?
I've been liaison to the committee for a long time, and Robert's done a great job, and he does keep things on track, which sometimes they get a little off down there.
Thank you for your service, Mr. Adams.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else for Arts Advisory? Come on up.
I didn't know if we needed to fill out a speaker
Nope.
slip. Not okay. Thank you. Sorry. Hello, I'm Susan Keller. I was on the Arts Advisory Committee for 9 years, an unexpired term, and then 2 terms. And I finished that in 2000, I believe it was 7. And since then, I served on the Visual Art and Public Places Committee, which seemed to be kind of the repository for people who were termed off of Arts Advisory. And then we discovered in the past years so that we were actually not authorized by the city to have a committee. So we've all been very gracefully released. And I find that I really miss my involvement in the arts. I very much enjoyed my tenure on the Arts Advisory. I was chair of the committee that established the bylaws and created the Poet Laureate program and helped select the first 2 Poets Laureate, and that was very exciting. I think it's a wonderful thing that the city has. I was vice chair 1 year, and I'm representing the performing arts community. I'm artistic director of Santa Barbara Revels, which is a very community-based performing arts organization that involves many, many volunteer performers as well as professionals. And I feel that having that perspective is important to bring to the Arts Advisory, because most of the people on the committee happen to be visual arts people, and so having the blend of different disciplines is really helpful. And I would appreciate the opportunity to serve. Robert mentioned institutional memory, so my experience with Arts Advisory now goes back almost 20 years. And when we were having some transition meetings to kind of figure out what to do about visual art in public places, the committee, it was helpful to have people that remembered the reason it got started and what has been done in the past. We have a wonderful but relatively new staff on the Arts Advisory and the County Arts Commission, and so I think I can really be helpful in that way, as well as continue to bring energy and interest to the committee. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
You want to tell us when the Revels are performing
Well,
while you're standing
might
right
just
there?
be able to give a plug for Santa Barbara Revels, which this year is doing an original show that highlights an event in Santa Barbara's history, the visit of Richard Henry Dana to Santa Barbara, where he attended the wedding of Anita de la Guerra. So the Revels takes place just prior to the wedding festivities, and as a result, we'll have sea shanties and all kinds of sailor material, as well as the Spanish material that the guests at the wedding would involve. And we've just confirmed that we will have an elder of the Barbareño band of Chumash participating in it, who will be a storyteller. So we are really excited about the opportunity to do something that's very Santa Barbara based this year on our 10th anniversary.
You
Thank
still
you for
didn't
that
say when it
opportunity.
was, though.
Oh, yes, I didn't. December
I'm
15th.
trying to help you.
I know you really are. Thank you. December 15th, 16th, and 17th at the Libero Theater, 4 performances. And as you know, the Libero is a wonderful place to see everything. So
Okay.
thanks very much.
You're welcome. All right. Anyone else for Arts Advisory? Great. Central Coast Commission for Senior Citizens. Civil Service Commission. Community Development and Human Services. Downtown Parking. Fire and Police Commission. Harbor Commission, we're just going to keep going. Harbor Commission? If anyone
Mr.
wants-
Parker's here. You're not going to be on?
Maybe he's just observing today. I don't know. So, Harbor Commission? Historic Landmarks? Come on up.
Mayor and
afternoon.
council members, my name is Ed Lenvik. I noticed that I only have 2 to 3 minutes, so you'll have to temper me as I tend to speak long. I want to thank the city for having the commissions, the design review commissions that they have, because the city has become a more beautiful place over the years that I've been involved in architecture due to the boards and commissions. I'm a licensed architect in California, have practiced architecture in Santa Barbara since 1966, and have been the principal of my own firm, Lenvik and Minor Architects, from 1975 until my retirement in 2010. I have been responsible for the design of many buildings in the EPV district, as well as the South Coast. Some of the buildings that our firm has designed in the EPV district, you may know, but you may not know who actually was responsible for them. Our firm did the Ralph's Market on Cabrillo and Chapala and De La Vina Streets, the Harbor View Inn at State and Cabrillo Boulevard. Most of the people buildings at the zoo, not the most recent building, which was designed by the Grinnell Collective, an office building at 1111 Chapala Street. We did the remodel of the I. Magnin building on State Street, which became the bankruptcy court building. I think a very successful building in the middle of State Street area. An office building at 30 East Figueroa Street, which is actually used as a good example in the design guidelines for the Landmarks Commission. And there are a number of other buildings in the EPV district which we are responsible for designing. I previously served on the City ABR from 1972 through 1986, and was on the first Environmental Review Committee, which was established in 1976. In response to some of the questions that were provided for us in our application, I am able to devote the time to the meetings since I'm retired. I am very familiar with the responsibilities of the Historic Landmarks Commission and have appeared before them many, many times over the years in private practice. My skills are those of a licensed architect. I can obviously read plans, and I can quickly see what the applicant is trying to accomplish by way of his drawings. I believe I am able to put together a reasonable and understandable comments for the benefit of the applicant. I know what I like to hear when I was appearing before these commissions, so I know what is the best way to communicate with them to aid them in developing a successful project. Besides designing buildings in the EPV, I have been involved in historical buildings. I was responsible for the restoration of the Sexton House, pardon me, the Sexton House in Goleta. It is a state and national historic structure. I currently serve on the county's Historic Landmarks Advisory Committee. I am also a trustee with the Courthouse Legacy Foundation and have had specific responsibility for the conservation of the mural room. And if you've been in that mural room since the murals were conserved and the lighting installed, you will realize it is a marvelous, marvelous restoration. And I had major responsibility with the Legacy Foundation for that. We are currently working on conservation of the Great Arch as it faces Anacapa Street. The reasons that I would like to serve on the HLAC are varied, but as I mentioned earlier, I have seen the city become more beautiful, the built environment become more beautiful over the 35 years that I've been practicing architecture in Santa Barbara. And that, I believe, is almost totally attributable to the review of the ABR, the Landmarks Commission, and the Planning Commission through the guidance of the City Council. I want to see that beauty continue. I want to see our city continue to grow and grow beautifully. And one of the main things I want to do is I want to see that the applicants, as well as the other commissioners, use the guidelines that are provided and have been developed by the Landmarks Commission, because they are a wonderful set of guidelines. It's a wonderful document, and I believe that if the applicants read it, understand it, and adhere to it, the job of the Landmarks Commission will be very, very easy, and I want to encourage that. So with those comments, if any questions, I'm available.
Thank you. Mr. Dominguez and then Ms. Murillo.
What do you think the most pressing current issues facing the city with regards to land use planning are?
Well, I only am applying for the Landmarks Commission. So I think that it's relatively, the problems faced are relatively narrow. What I see happening is we see very, very large buildings being proposed to help solve the housing problem. And they are not respecting the neighborhood. And there's got to be a method by which they can accomplish their goals, and at the same time we don't radically change the built environment in the neighborhood. It's a difficult question, but that's why I'm not applying for ABR's vacancy.
And then the HLC process, in your opinion, is it too long, too short, just right?
I believe the Landmarks Commission is operating as efficiently as they can. The applications that are brought before them are driven by a lot of forces, very oftentimes not by the architect. And so we are there a lot of times to help the architect bring the project into conformance with the guidelines in a method that respects the neighborhood, the current neighborhood environment. And so it takes time to accomplish that. Sometimes the property owners aren't willing to bend, and it becomes a contentious thing. But my goal is not to see it be contentious, but to guide the applicant and the owner with the guidelines that are available to them.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Murillo?
Thank you. So, hi. So you serve now on the county's Historic Landmarks Advisory
Committee. That's true.
Council. Okay. So how long have you been on that?
I've been on it, I served out 2 years of an expired term, and I've been on now for about a year. So it's maybe 3 to 4 years. It's a very different commission than the cities, in that the county only deals with specific landmarks.
Okay.
Whereas
and so you're a practicing architect, and
Yes.
you want to serve on both of these committees?
Whether or not I continue with the county is the decision I've kind of got to deal with. I probably don't need to serve on it, but when I've met with the supervisor from my district, I told him that we will see. We will see. It meets once a month, oftentimes not even that.
So you're in the 1st District, then? Which
yes,
district? Okay.
I'm in the 1st District.
Thank you, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Hotchkiss.
And he's also a wonderful watercolorist, I will say, among all the other things that he does.
Thank you.
That was a statement, not a question. There you go. Okay,
Yeah,
so
well,
thank
I
you.
could answer. I mean,
That's all right.
I could agree with him.
Well, good. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mahan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. Yes, he is a very good artist. He has a painting. We paint every Saturday morning, and he has a painting on one of my easels. And when my friends come into the studio, they say, "Gee whiz, Bill, you're really doing a lot better than you used to." Anyway, I'm here to ask for another 4-year term on the Historic Landmarks Commission. I want to report that I've found it to be a very, very rewarding experience. And there's probably 4 reasons for that. The first one is Landmarks has a really good staff. We really have a good staff. As Ed Lindvik said, we have a great guideline. The guidelines for the Historic Landmarks Commission are really just incredibly wonderful. And they guide the architect, the applicant, and also the commission so that we're all on the same level playing field, and it's very, very helpful. My colleagues on the commission I'm so proud to serve with them. They're all really, really, it's a great commission. And lastly, and most importantly, the opportunity to protect and preserve El Pueblo Viejo. I really care about that. El Pueblo Viejo is a crown jewel of Santa Barbara. It's why the cruise ships stop here and not in Santa Monica. And it's just what makes Santa Barbara something that we're so proud of. I've been a very active commissioner. I've done the consent calendar for the last 3 years. I serve on 8 different committees. Some of them aren't too active, but I have 8 committees that I'm on. I'm a retired architect, so I have no projects, and I have no conflict of interest because of that. I'm just, I have the experience. You probably read my application, so you realize that I have the experience to do the design review. So what I want to do is I want to thank you, the sitting City Council, for giving me 4 years of the Historic Landmarks Commission, and I want to thank all of the other prior city councils for all of what they've given me, that I've had the opportunity to serve the city of Santa Barbara for so long. And I'm asking you for another 4 years on the Historic Landmarks Commission.
Okay. Thank you for your service
Well,
to date.
thank
Mr.
you.
Hart has a question.
Yes. So if there are any questions, I'm here to answer.
Mr. Hart does, yeah.
Mr. Mann, thank
Yes.
you for your service, your many years of service. What do you think about the recent conversation about increasing housing density downtown?
I think we need more housing downtown. I think that the State Street is not going to survive unless there are more people that are interested in using it. And I see we've approved quite a few AUD projects actually already, and I mean they're in the pipeline now. I like them close to State Street. As AUDs get farther away from State Street, we find the commission. I think I can speak for the commission. We find it harder to find compatibility with the large buildings. Up close to State, there are a lot of really big buildings on State Street, and it's pretty easy to find compatibility up close. So I'm positive about more housing and more people using State Street and making it very vibrant.
Thank you.
Mr. Dominguez?
Just to follow up on that question, how much housing, what would you quantify it as?
I can't put a quantity on it, but I do feel that the unit should be smaller rather than larger. I think that's where we're going to find affordability, and I will say that I don't think AUD is going to meet the affordability goal that City Council hoped for. I just think there's too many people that want to come to Santa Barbara and live here, and they can afford to pay more. And I truly believe that if we're going to have real affordability, we're going to have to find subsidy. Somehow we're going to have to find a way to subsidize it, as we have done in the past. And we have some very wonderful affordable housing projects, and I think they've all been subsidized.
So would you think 1,000 units would be in the ballpark for downtown?
1,000 units close to State Street? That'd be like 2,000 people? That would be a start, yeah.
So start meaning you think that more would be
I think
optimal?
it could be more. Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the same question I asked, what do you think are the big land use issues facing the city?
Well, I think housing is really a big land use. That is the issue, and I think that probably up around Cottage Hospital is also an area that we should think about more dense housing, because that's a big employer. Possibly around City College would be another opportunity. I'm pretty negative about AUDs just coming into the R3 zones, like over on the west side where they're all single-family houses. It's really hard to find compatibility in those situations. You just can't do it, and that's tough for the applicant, and it's tough for everybody. So those three areas, I think downtown. Outer State Street, too. Outer State Street is okay, yeah.
In regards to the length of the process, too long, too short, just right?
You are talking about applications coming through. I think generally speaking, they go through pretty well. We've had a couple of projects that have been problematic. One of them is going to be on appeal next year, 800 Santa Barbara Street. That was a tough one. But I think that generally speaking, it goes through pretty well, and I think, as Mr. Lenvik said, I think that the Historic Landmark Commission and staff operate very efficiently.
Thank you.
Mr. White?
I just have a comment, Madam Mayor, and that is that these two gentlemen are applying. This is a century and a half or a century plus of experience here, and it's really neat that these silver-haired warriors are willing to put in yet some more time doing this. And, to say nothing of their Saturday morning painting sessions, which produces some beautiful work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And also congratulations to our mayor-elect and our councilman-re-elect. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for historic landmarks? Okay. Housing Authority. Okay, Mr. Sir, come on up. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm the Housing Authority Commissioner, and my time is just about up, and I'd like to put another 2 years in.
Okay, and you're in the senior tenant category, correct?
Yes.
Do you want to discuss maybe a little how it's been the last 2 years?
What's that?
How has it been these last 2 years? Have you enjoyed it? What kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And we have quite a few projects under construction right now. And that's about it right now.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, any questions? All right. Well, thank you so much for your service
thank
to
you.
date. Thank you. All right. Library Board. Come on up.
Good afternoon. My name is Qmas Nasseri. I am a resident of Santa Barbara for the past 20-something years. I don't know, you have my application. I was planning to be here last time, but something happened. I could not be here. You do have my application here. I am interested. I'm a published author, and I do research work, and I have a lot of publications in research, and I use library a lot. I used to use the library a lot, but since the computers came, I'm using for the scientific work that I do more of the computers than walking into the library. But for other type of work and other books like novels and stories and things or historical documentations, I use library. And the reason I applied for this advisory board is that we have a contingent of Middle Eastern population in the city of Santa Barbara, which comprises of the Arabs and the Israelis and the Pakistanis and the Iranians. But we don't have any kind of Middle Eastern books in the library. There is no section of Middle Eastern books in the library. My interest is that to try to see if we can establish a Middle Eastern segment for the library to have the collection of the books that these people and their children can use. That's my main interest of applying for this position.
Great. Well, that's a great idea. Mr. Dominguez, did you have a question? Oh, okay. Well, great. Any other questions? Well, thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you very much.
Library Board, come on up. Yep. Mr. Hess, come on up.
Mayor Schneider, members of City Council, good afternoon. My name is Milt Hess. I've been a member of the Library Board for 4 years now, and I'm here today to apply for appointment for another 4-year term. It's been a delight for me to see the library's offerings to the community blossom under the leadership of the library director. About a year into my tenure, I wrote a think piece entitled Envisioning the Future. And in it, I foresaw the library, the public library, becoming Santa Barbara's public square. And thanks to the director's initiatives, what we have today is very much what I had in mind at the time. Not just a book repository, but a place where residents of all ages can come together for social, literary, musical, artistic, political, and educational pursuits. I've been chair of the library board for 1.5 years now, and I have appeared before you in that capacity from time to time. I hope the information and the perspectives that I've provided have been helpful. You've also appointed me as Santa Barbara's representative to the County Library Advisory Committee, and it would enhance my effectiveness as a member of the LAC if I can continue as a member of the library board. So, thank you for considering me for another term. Are there any questions that I can answer for you?
Any questions? Thank you for your service to both committees to date.
Thank you.
Anyone else for the library board? Okay. Living Wage Advisory Committee? I don't see any. Neighborhood Advisory Council? Park, come on up.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Council. I actually missed the Central Coast Commission for Senior Citizens. May I do both?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So my name is David Penbecci. I currently serve as the student trustee on Santa Barbara City College's Board of Trustees and the Student Senate as well. As far as time allotments go, I can make both commission meetings available at both times. Regarding the Central Coast Commission, I'm really passionate about senior citizens. I don't have too much professional experience, but during this past campaign, I had spoken to senior citizens to get out the vote, and it was a really deep and moving experience for me. In addition to that, I feel like there are fundamental issues to address in regards to the treatment of senior citizens, not only by our federal government, but the way some think of senior citizens generally. Regarding the Neighborhood Advisory Council, I currently live on the east side. I did attend one Neighborhood Advisory Council meeting a few months ago and saw Kathy Maria there as well. Sorry, give me 1 second. So in regards to experience, I currently sit on 6 external committees at SBCC. These are basically committees where faculty meet, administration, different constituency groups on campus. In addition to that, I've worked personally with faculty and students in regards to board policies, and have made myself available to students and faculty. So I have some sort of experience with our population at SBCC. I envision SBCC students and faculty working with the community, particularly the Neighborhood Advisory Council. I'm currently the chair of the Santa Barbara Community Outreach Committee, which we established this year. It's an internal committee on the Associated Student Government. We've begun an internship program, which allows us to engage with the community. And I think that there can be a deep relationship that SBCC and the city can build. addressing the fifth question, my concerns, the first one is the nature of policy. I did ask Sheriff Bill Brown this as well in regards to the fundamental concepts of retribution and rehabilitation, the way that our police department, not only here, but Sheriff and ICE and different groups like that, their philosophy in terms of how they treat citizens. The second is the need to address problems of gentrification and driving out low-income residents. I'm pretty passionate about that too. The city has a lot of natives, and it's sad to see that some people have to go. I think we can deal with those. And lastly, I would like to bring my experience to build a sense of community with high school students, middle school students, and the youth in general.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else for neighborhood advisory? Nope. Parks and Recreation. Come on up.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of council. My name is Roger Perry. It was 6 months ago you saw fit to allow me to be a Parks Commissioner. I've provided you again with my resume and a little bit of background, and I'm happy to say that I found a real niche here. So far in these 6 months, I've been active with the Arts and Crafts. I'm the liaison from the commission to that weekly show. We are re-inspired to increase the stainless steel volleyball courts down at East Beach, and I am active in the development for the bathhouse. In fact, I met with Steve and Jill yesterday. Open to questions.
Any questions? No, I know you were finishing up another term, so that's why you're here
Oh,
so
I'm
soon.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, no, that's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Thank you all.
Thank you for your service today.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else on Parks and Recreation? Okay. Planning Commission. Come on up.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of the council. Deborah Schwartz here before you to express my interest, if I'm so honored, in receiving your support for reappointment. I am as passionate today and as dedicated today as I was when the council first appointed me to the Planning Commission. And there have been many projects and policy items that I've worked on in this time. I was also serving as chair in 2014, where I organized the first strategic retreat for the Planning Commission in conjunction with staff. And I would be honored to continue as a public servant, serving with 6 diverse and experienced colleagues. I have in my packet in front of you a few highlights of the significant projects and policies I've worked on with my colleagues. I'd like to just highlight them for you here. The Museum of Natural History Master Plan, the Museum of Art Renovation Plan, Museum of Exploration and Innovation Approval and Construction, MOXIE, and numerous Housing Authority, City of Santa Barbara housing projects. I have also served as liaison to numerous committees over the years, and that also takes a significant dedication of time. Just to highlight a few, and to me these dovetail with number 2 in the questionnaire, which is the current issues facing the city. I have for 4 years served on downtown parking. I've been involved with the Transportation and Circulation Committee. I, along with my colleague John Campanella and Mike Jordan, were part of the original housing subcommittee that, with staff, took a very early look at and evaluated the average unit size density incentive program to determine if we're on track, how we're going to evaluate it, and what changes, if any, might be needed to continue it on past its trial lifetime. I've also served as liaison to the Water Commission, and with water being such a continuing key concern for the members of the community, that was important. I have also served and will continue to serve with your support on the local coastal plan update initiative with our long-range planning staff, where we're negotiating and coming around the bend to final negotiations with the Coastal Commission staff on that very important update. In my own time, I attended the State Street Design Charrette on October 21st, and I know that's coming to you with an AIA presentation December 5th. I'm very much in support of our continuing discussion, both strategically and regulatorily, looking at how we can revitalize downtown and bring more mixed-use downtown, including housing. Also, 3 long hearings on the new zoning ordinance, which have now been completed. I was part of that. And I think, if I have to point out one key issue and concern, it's housing, housing, and housing. I attended the Radius Real Estate Annual Economic Forecast, and the keynote speaker said that the key linchpin to all of our economic issues in Santa Barbara rest with housing and us being able to effectively address and resolve it in various ways that we are. I'm also looking forward, let me say, to participating, I think it's tomorrow evening, in the reimagining of the State Street underpass. Looking forward to that. So I'm involved in as many ways as I can, both on the commission and as liaison and in my own personal time. And I'd be really honored to have your support when you vote on appointments next month, and happy to answer any questions, or I'm available outside of today if you'd like to meet with me to discuss my work on the Planning Commission and as a public servant to the community.
Thank you, and thank you for your service to date. Any questions? Mr. Dominguez?
One of the applicants earlier today commented on the housing and how it hasn't been coming in as affordable as we hoped for, and you've heard me probably dozens of times say that we're actually reducing our stock of workforce housing if you're looking at 60 to 120%. What are your views on that? Do you agree with that, or do you think we're creating workforce housing?
And you and I, Councilmember Dominguez, have talked about this also offline. I think this is a complex and vexing issue because the way in which we conceived of the AUD program was certainly in providing and in the need to provide more workforce housing. I stand here before you today to say perhaps we shouldn't have included the word affordable, because I think that word alone has triggered a great deal of consternation and differing of opinions as to how to define it. I clearly see the need of providing, in as many creative ways as we can, a mix of types of housing, including mostly rental housing, that will be available to all income levels in our community, all demographics. And now with some new housing legislation that's been provided, we have both the carrot and the stick in some of those new housing bills. I think we'll have some new tools that I'm really hoping the council, starting in January, will take up so that we can provide more inclusionary housing and at least provide a mix of market rate and some rent restricted or more affordable without it being highly subsidized. Certainly, probably more participation by the private market for that. Does that help answer,
Yes.
kind of address? And I'm sure you and I will continue to have more of these discussions, since it's, to me, one of the top issues in the city.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Ms. Murillo?
Thank you. Commissioner Schwartz, I just wanted to compliment you on the work you do outside of the Planning Commission. I think you're engaged with Santa Barbara Beautiful and Coast, so you understand that nexus between transportation and housing. And then I saw you at the local coastal plan open house over the weekend, and I think they had a big turnout. So I was just wanted to acknowledge that you don't just sit in the meetings up here for Planning Commission, that you're engaged. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, and congratulations, elect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. Anyone else? Planning Commission. Okay. Rental housing mediation. Come on up. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Schneider, members of the council. I'm seeking a term on the Rental Housing Mediation Task Force Board.
And your name?
Daniel Herlinger.
Thank you.
Sorry. And
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear your name.
Daniel Herlinger.
Thank you.
Okay. In anticipation of the question about why more than one or two terms, I've been on the board since 2005, and I'm currently serving as the vice chair. I believe I have unique qualifications for this position. I have a certificate in negotiation and mediation from UCSB. I've completed dozens of mediations over the years, all successful. I've done mediations for our small claims court here in Ventura County. And then with my background and experience, I'm able to help train and mentor some of the younger mediators on the board. I've listed some of my other outside or community service activities on my application, including the chairman of the CENCAL board.
Great. Well, thank you for your service all these years. Any questions? No. Thank you so much. All right, come on up.
My name is Connie Petrie, and I'm applying to be a board member for the Mediation Task Force. I have been working as a teacher. I just actually recently retired for almost 20 years in a high school setting. I was a math and science teacher, so I have done a lot of mediation with my high school students, which was always full of drama. And I have been a tenant when my husband and I first started out. And I have also had some issues with my 3 adult children getting rentals while they were in college. And currently, I am a landlord in the city of Santa Barbara. And I have seen a lot of issues with landlords and tenants. And I took an interest in this because the cost of an attorney is just prohibitive for most people. And this is just such an amazing concept and idea, and I would like to get involved. Since I'm retired, I like to give my time to worthwhile courses for this beautiful city. And right now, I am a volunteer and a docent at the Museum of Natural History, docenting for the school groups because I do miss teaching very much. So I hope that I will be selected.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Nope. Thank you very much. Nope, no questions. Anyone else for rental housing mediation? Okay. The Youth Council, Santa Barbara Youth Council, come on up. Good afternoon.
Hello, my name is Quinn Steffen. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Last spring, I was able to spend the afternoon with Mayor Schneider, and of the many things that I learned about our city's government, I was especially interested in the Youth Council and how I could make a difference in the community. I was put in contact with the Youth Council and invited to shadow the meetings. I've been attending the meetings since August, and I hope that I will be able to continue my involvement. It is often said that children are the future leaders, and that is true. But we are not always given the chance to become those leaders before we are thrust into the position as adults. Being leaders as youth helps to prepare us for the future at the same time as allowing us to share our unique perspectives as teenagers. I see a position on the Youth Council as a way to represent the youth of Santa Barbara and to promote causes that are relevant in our everyday lives. One cause that I am passionate about is supporting and helping those who are food insecure. 1 in 4 people in Santa Barbara do not know where their next meal is coming from, and I would like to do my part to change that from food drives or anything else that would aid the effort. The Youth Council would give me more of a voice in the community to support the causes that I am passionate about, and I know as a person who has a voice, it is my job to help those who do not. After seeing firsthand what the Youth Council has the power to do, I would like to use my confidence and outspoken nature to bring a helpful and optimistic personality to the Youth Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Quinn and I spent an afternoon. We went to the Cabrillo Arts Pavilion, right? Saw the bathhouse, and then took a tour of El Estero wastewater treatment plant.
Yes.
And it's always fascinating to take a tour of El Estero wastewater treatment plant. And we got to see the desal plant across the way from the viewing platform. So It was a good day.
Yes.
Yeah, it was great. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Yep. Any questions? Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else for the Youth Council? All right. Must be for the Single Family Design Review Board. Come on up.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and City Council members. My name is Jan Farrell,
and I am applying for the Citizen at Large position for Single Family Design and Review Board. I grew up out here in Goleta, and I'm a retired teacher, and so I have the time to give back to the community. Currently, I am the president of the Courthouse Legacy Foundation, and we work very hard on conservation and restoration projects of our beautiful courthouse. I think that is my main interest in single-family design, is preserving our neighborhoods, making sure our neighborhoods are compatible with the design. I have done a lot of studying of the guidelines of the Neighborhoods and Single-Family Design Review Board. I feel it's a really great guidelines for builders, homeowners, architects to make sure that their projects are compatible for the neighborhoods that they are going to be built in or remodeled. I think neighborhood compatibility is of extreme importance, and I want to work hard to ensure that. Great. Do you have any questions for me?
Well, thank you. Any questions? Yep, go ahead,
Okay.
Mr. Dominguez.
Do you have any experience with plans or designs?
I have some basic. I owned 4 homes, and I've remodeled all of them. I'm also in the process of developing and building a 3-unit townhome down in Oceanside. So I look at plans, I study site land plans and the landscape design, so I have a basic understanding, but I am not an architect.
Great, thank you.
Great. Well, this is a public at-large position, so you don't need to be an architect for this slot. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Did we get everyone? Last chance. All right. We will continue this to November 21st and December 5th for additional interviews. Thank you all. And with that, we'll go on to any council member committee assignment reports. We were a little busy last week, I think, on Tuesday. I do want to thank the city clerk's office and all the staff volunteers who made the election happen smoothly. I know we were waited with bated breath for the numbers to come out, but they did, and they're accurate, and all those, well, that's what they're finalizing, but it's all good. But I know that's a lot of work put in, and so I just want to acknowledge the staff for making that happen. Ms. Murillo.
Thank you. As I said, I attended the local coastal plan open house, and it had really interesting information about anticipating sea level rise. You know, unfortunately, we're looking at, we need to prepare for that long term. I was also at the Housing Task Force meeting the day after the election, and I might let Chair White give an update rather than me, but we're looking at specifics related to changes to the AUD program. A lot of talk about that today, and we're getting to a place where the projects will give us the community benefits that we're looking for. Thank you.
Mr. Hart?
I attended the TEDx presentation at the New Victoria Theater. Mark Sylvester and his wife organized that, and it was really a spectacular performance of local speakers talking about a wide diversity of topics. And what was really interesting is they mentioned that the previous events, and I'm going to forget the exact amount, but it was, you know, on the order of millions of views of people all around the world watching these presentations in previous conferences here in Santa Barbara, and it shows the power of great ideas and that kind of dialogue. Then I also, with Councilmember-elect Ms. Sneddon and Councilmember Dominguez, attended the Santa Barbara Trust for Historic Preservation event that was in De La Guerra Plaza. It was a wonderful evening and celebrating the work of the Trust and raising money for their effort.
Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the Housing Task Force meeting of last Wednesday got to the report that the city contracted for vis-a-vis affordability requirements on projects. What the nexus between what can we be imposing affordability requirements on rental projects or not? And the short answer is yes. And the task force is supportive of requiring affordability in a certain measure within the rental program, and that will be coming forward to council as part of the package of recommendations.
Okay. And with that, we are adjourned until next week.